Let's bring in our panel right now. NBC's David Gregory, the moderator of Meet the Press. Eugene Robinson is a columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC political analyst. Cynthia Tucker is a political columnist and currently a visiting professor at the University of Georgia. MSNBC political analyst and the Huffington Post Howard Fineman joins us now, and the Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank. I should say at the beginning here, gentlemen and ladies, that the man who joined us earlier tonight in introducing Herman Cain was Lynn Wood, who's an attorney, very prominent one, based down in Atlanta. He has represented former Congressman Gary Condit. He's defended the woman in the Kobe Bryant case, the notorious case involving that. And, of course, he's also represented Richard Jewell, the security guard falsely accused of planting a bomb at the 1996 Olympics down in Atlanta. Let's start with David. David Gregory, I guess the key line is, I don't even know who this woman is, remains at the heart of this story. Either he's telling the truth with his memory as it is, or she's telling the truth. It seems to me hard to believe. Well, let's leave it open to you. This open question now. Who's telling the truth?
Well, you raised this before we had the press conference. She's made an accusation. He's denied it, denied even knowing her, said he's never acted inappropriately, said that previous accusations against him that were the basis of an agreement or a settlement with the National Restaurant Association had no merit, had no basis. Sexual harassment is a very difficult thing to prove. I mean, you talk about witnesses. It's not like this is often done with a committee around you. And that's part of the problem here. But I think what's striking about this, Chris, is that, and that's pretty striking in and of itself, but he went beyond that. I mean, he is now, after first blaming the Perry campaign for leaking this, then blaming the media for somehow being involved in a witch hunt, now he's accusing the Democratic machine of bringing forth a troubled woman, his words, to make false accusations against him, and as he's done in other instances, whether it was talking about people involved in Occupy Wall Street, he doesn't have any facts to back that up. But that's part of the overall storyline, the narrative that he wants Americans to accept.
Gene, he also sort of began to plant a bit of a narrative, reminding us, I didn't even know about this, that this woman, Sharon Bialek, who's the woman who's accused of a really gross, you could even call it sexual assault in the car that day, apparently, the way she describes it. He mentioned the fact that she had other civil suits and the fact that she had financial problems and suggests that may well have contributed to her accusation. I mean, he's basically impeaching her as a witness here. But again, the troubled woman, as David said, calling her a troubled woman, really impeaching her as if he's an attorney in a courtroom. And I go back to this denial. It's so total. I don't even know who this woman is.
Yeah, that had better be true, because if it's not, somebody's going to come up with a picture of him and her, or somebody's going to remember an interaction between him and her, and there you're going to have it. Calling her a troubled woman, I think, was, my personal opinion, ill-advised. I don't think he had to go there. As far as this being some sort of Democratic Party conspiracy. Most professionals in the Democratic Party I know would love for Herman Cain to be the nominee of the Republican Party. And
that's fair enough.
Are probably trying to squelch this story. And there was a question that he didn't answer. He kind of pointedly didn't answer about the accuser with whom there's a settlement with the National Restaurant Association, Ms. Krasauer. He said that her complaint was found baseless, and he was asked by whom? What are these findings? Let us see these findings. That just blew right past him. He would not engage with that question. It's going to be asked again.
Well, the New York Times is reporting.
Chris,
go ahead.
I mean, he said he didn't recall. I mean, he could have found out. I mean, that's a knowable fact. When there was a basis of an agreement, and he could have gone back and been able to answer Mark Lacey's questions from the Times, which was, well, okay, what happened? What was your version, and what did they actually conclude to the point that they gave her some kind of financial settlement?
Yeah, and the fact is, David, and everyone else, Karen Krasauer, according to the New York Times, Jim Rutenberg and Michael Shear reporting late today, she is going to go public fairly soon herself, like the other witness here. Let me go to Cynthia on this one. Cynthia, we all heard the same thing, and this is classic. I'm not denigrating him, but he is interesting to try to keep track of. Herman Cain. Did he or did he not admit or agree to taking a lie detector test? It's hard to parse his sentence.
Excellent question. It's much like the answer he gave not long ago on abortion, where he said he's pro-life, but it's up to the individual. When at first he said, I would absolutely take a lie detector test. And then he said, only if there were a good reason for me to do so. Well, I can't imagine that there would be a better reason for him to do so than now. Let me also say that I was struck by the tone of his response. I was expecting a much more pointed, perhaps more emotional, complete denial of these charges from a man who says he's innocent. I'm thinking of men I know. If they were charged, if a woman came forward in the middle of a presidential campaign, a woman they'd never seen before, never laid hands on, and made charges that are very damaging and very troubling, it seems to me that most men I know would have a response that was much more pointed, that said, I absolutely did nothing of the sort. And he said he didn't do it, but it was a more muted, emotional response than I expected from him. I also have to say that David is absolutely right. If he wanted to put these charges to rest, he would go to the National Restaurant Association and say, let me see the files so that I can have a comprehensive response to all the questions, and he hasn't done that.
And can I add one more thing, Chris? The important thing about Ms. Kraushaar is she's actually now talking about going forward because she thinks it's important to present a front, to have several women in what she called in the Times piece a body of evidence. That could stand up to what he's saying. I mean, that's what's very interesting. That's, I think, what will have some people, weighing this very carefully, what he's saying, what they're saying. But the idea that there would be several of them that would be willing to, in a couple of cases, to no longer be anonymous, despite initially wanting to before their name was leaked to the press, to present some consistent stories.
Howard, let me ask you about the political context and which direction. We know this is going to continue to be a Perry Mason kind of story, detective story, if you will, what actually happened in these cases. That's one of the stories here. The political direction of the story, he seems to have a confidence beyond anything I've seen in politics. If he even has a smidgen of guilt in these cases, he doesn't show it. If he even has a smidgen of embarrassment, he doesn't show it. He comes off with the confidence of a man who is absolutely innocent of any offense at any time in his life. He is a perfect man, as he describes it. Now, this self-confidence, how far will it carry him with the portion of the Republican Party he very clearly stated today he was interested in? He doesn't care about the doubting Thomases. He wants the true believers. Can he hold them?
Well, let me make a legal comment first off. Lynn Wood, who is the attorney who represented and introduced him there, is famous for attacking the media, for threatening lawsuits, for threatening libel suits, for threatening the media with reckless disregard of the truth. Okay. He was the dog that didn't bark today. Yes, he introduced Herman Cain, but he made no threats. So, yes, Herman Cain thinks he can do it based on his personality. I think you have to look at it state by state. In Iowa, at some point, evangelical Christians, who are key in that state where he's running neck and neck with Mitt Romney, may ask questions, especially after actual people came forward, women came forward, and it wasn't just a matter of the media attacking Herman Cain. In the South, if he gets that far, there are a lot of people who might have been willing to vote for Herman Cain in the Bible Belt of the South, but he had to be without reproach. If he can prove it, fine. But there are an awful lot of questions being asked here. And even though the overall numbers in the horse race, Chris, have not changed after this minute, now's when we have to start looking at it state by state. This could eventually hurt him among conservative cultural voters in Iowa, South Carolina, and across the South on Super Tuesday.
Let me go to Dana Milback on this. I guess the question now is the personality of this fellow. I'm going back to that question. I watched this man now, as we all did, for a half hour here, defend himself as if he were Billy Budd, some perfectly innocent character out of literature, without any smidgen of embarrassment. The fact that, as one of the reporters said, why would 4 women come out? Why is there so much of this testimony against you? It didn't bother him. The man is so self-confident.
Yeah, I think the most revealing line in this whole thing is when he said, "I have never behaved inappropriately with anyone." I mean, who among us can say something like that? So it had almost a megalomaniacal feel to it, and that can help you explain. So if his standard of sexual harassment is different from everybody else's, well, by his standard, he never did anything, even if perhaps a reasonable person would feel otherwise. And he was also, I think, very revealing and said he doesn't really care what the larger public is saying. He cares about the people who are supporting him right now, and that tells you a great deal about Cain's strategy. It's not necessarily to win the nomination or to win the presidency. It's to be as powerful as he can with that 24% of the electorate in Iowa, the Tea Party faithful. He's going to be a hero to that movement when he flames out, which he inevitably has to.
Well, what do you make of that answer, which we have to get to particulars here? He did admit his willingness to take a lie detector test. In practically the same sentence, Dana, he said, "I'm not going to do it because this isn't a reason to do it." What did that sentence or combination of thoughts mean? And this is where we have to get to the way the man's mind worked. He is so self-confident. But is he in any credible way expressing useful truth?
Well, of course not, Chris. If he wanted this to be done with, there's a very easy way to do it. It's to authorize the National Restaurant Association to release these files. Obviously, if the woman involved in the complaint or agreement or settlement or whatever it's being called is coming forth, then that shouldn't be a problem to have that out there. That's not what this was about tonight. It was raising the level of the denials to this extraordinarily sweeping claim. This really wasn't about resolving the truth.
Howard,
Chris,
you have to go. I have to go back to Howard for a second. Howard, you have to go out here. Tell me where this story moves to now in terms of does it go the who did it, what did he do question, further witness question, or does it go to the political track of is this going to stand up in the debate tomorrow night, the CNBC debate? Will it become a part of the political narrative?
Well, it'll be both, but I think it'll still be factual. As Eugene said, he asserted flatly that he didn't know this woman. My understanding is that there is a picture or video of her greeting him at some event a month ago. I haven't seen that video, but depending on how it looks, whether he has a quizzical look like, who the heck are you, or whether it's somebody that he knew, we'll see soon enough. That's number one. Number two, the federal employee who came forward, who's talked in the New York Times, is going to be the story tonight and tomorrow. Then these two people having come forward, I think the others who have made allegations may well do so as well. There are a lot more factual things to come out, and having made the sweeping statements that he made, that just begs more factual reporting about whether he was telling the truth or whether he was telling a sweeping lie over a period of a half hour today. And as I said, his attorney, who's a past master of threatening the media, didn't do that today, and I find that kind of curious. You say that Herman Cain was so confident. I'm not sure how totally confident he was, despite the cleverly sweeping nature of what he said.
Let me go back to David on the question. Has he recovered his presumption of innocence before the conservative political world, do you believe, after this performance?
I just don't know. I mean, I think that's a very good question, but my hunch is that that's a foundation that's beginning to crack. You have, I even saw on Twitter, Michelle Malkin, the conservative commentator, saying that half the people she talked to among conservatives believed the woman yesterday, Ms. Bielek. So I think that foundation may be beginning to crack. I think Howard has it exactly right. There wasn't a lot of room here. I mean, this was... I didn't do anything inappropriately, period, and I don't know who she is. So if there's additional reporting, if there's more that comes out, it is what it is. I mean, otherwise it's very difficult. I think that the extent to which, if Herman Cain is telling the truth, if these are false accusations, if accusations against him did not have merit, and that stands the test of time, then I think he'll be strong. Getting to that place, though, could be very difficult when there's going to be day after day of questions and perhaps some additional public testimony, as it were, about this, and people sort of evaluating people's credibility here. Remember, I apologize for mispronouncing her name, Ms. Krashauer. I mean, she's 55 years old, Inspector General's Office of the Treasury Department. This is not somebody who wanted to come forward, whose name was leaked. It's not like you can say everybody is rushing to the cameras with Gloria Allred, and that's how somehow made it to the Democratic machine.
And we're going to see an MO, if you will, using a criminal term I probably shouldn't use, but a method. If he's accused of the same kind of pattern of behavior by a number of people, and it begins to take a pattern for most people watching, they'll say, yeah, why would 2 or 3 people say the same thing about something they said he did if he didn't do that? And then common sense comes into play.